I've heard of affairs that are strictly platonic, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. And I think affairs that you must keep Masonic are better bets. If little pets give big baguettes, time rolls on, and youth is gone, and you can't straighten up when you bend. But stiff back or stiff knees, you stand straight at Tiffany's. Diamonds, diamonds. I don't mean rhinestones, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. So sang Marilyn Monroe in the 1953 film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Hello, I'm M.E. on M.E. and History. Throughout the centuries, diamonds have been viewed in many different ways, as symbols of unending love, as sources of mysterious powers that could ward off disease, and as bringers of trouble rather than good fortune. They have even changed the course of history, sometimes for the better, but more often for the worse. And that, my viewers, is where this story starts. In this video, I will be covering an event that has all the elements of a great novel: intrigue, betrayal, and so on. That event is known as L'Affaire du Collier de la Reine, or, in English, the Affair of the Queen's Necklace. This most certainly liaisonic affair occurred between 1784 and 1785 during the reign of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. The scandal that resulted would go on to cement the people's belief that the monarchy, and the aristocracy in general, was out of touch with reality. Indeed, Napoleon later wrote that the affair was the trigger that led to the French Revolution. Let's start with the story's background. We begin the story in 1772 at the Château de Versailles. King Louis XV wanted to give his mistress, Madame du Barry, a new diamond necklace. Now, I'm not talking about a necklace you'd find at Tiffany's or Cartier's. No, Louis XV wanted this necklace to outshine all other necklaces before and possibly after it. After a lot of searching, he commissioned two Parisian jewelers, Charles Baumer and Paul Bassange, to create that kind of necklace. In order for the royal demand to be met, it took Baumer and Bassange lots of time and lots of cash. The end result was quite an exquisite sight to behold, one that came with a hefty price tag in the form of 2 million livres, or roughly $15.1 million in today's currency. By the time the jewelers had completed the necklace, however, the timing could not have been worse. In 1774, Louis XV died of smallpox, and his grandson and heir, Louis XVI, gave Madame du Barry the boot from court. That left the necklace without a buyer and without a recipient. Only a queen could afford to purchase and wear this elaborate bauble. So, hopes high and fingers crossed, Baumer and Bassange paid a visit to the new queen, Marie Antoinette, and asked her about buying the necklace. Now, as we all know, Marie Antoinette was well known for her frivolity, extravagance, and compulsive shopping. She was constantly spending money left, right, and center on parties, gambling, decorations, and, of course, her wardrobe. Her jewelry collection was vast, and the jewelers hoped that she would include the necklace in it. However, Marie Antoinette declined to purchase the necklace. Exactly why would a shopaholic woman with a rather visibly lavish way of life refuse to purchase such an accessory? Well, Marie Antoinette had known Madame du Barry before she officially became the queen. To put it mildly, the two women hated each other's guts. Buying jewelry that was originally intended for an enemy was ample reason to disinterest Marie, no matter how tempting it was. Another reason for her refusal to buy the necklace was its steep price. In 1778, Louis XVI, knowing of his wife's love of jewelry, offered to buy it for her as a present. Sweet though the gesture was, Marie Antoinette turned down the offer. "We have more need of naval ships than of necklaces," she reportedly said. Over the next 5 years, Beaumeur and Bassange tried to sell the necklace in other European courts, but were unsuccessful. In 1781, the jewelers went back to Versailles and attempted to sell the necklace to Marie Antoinette after she had given birth to her first son. Call it an 18th century version of our current day push presents, if you will. Once again, surprise, surprise, Marie refused to buy the necklace. While this crisis was going on, someone else had their sights on those magnificent strings of jewels. That someone was Jeanne Saint-Remy de Valois, a woman who had blood ties to the Valois dynasty via an illegitimate son of King Henri II. She married Nicolas de la Motte, a gendarme officer, in 1780. The de la Motte family's claim to nobility was shaky, but nonetheless the couple took the titles of Comte and Comtesse de la Motte. Now, Jeanne was one ambitious lady. She, a woman with royal blood, from a previous dynasty, mind you, in her veins, wanted to live a lifestyle befitting the status that came with that blood. Unfortunately, Nicholas wasn't able to meet the financial means to get and maintain such a lifestyle. Nor was Jeanne's small pension from the king high enough to help her climb up the rungs to high society. What was she to do? Hatch a plot, that's what. In 1784, Jeanne became the mistress of Cardinal Louis de Rohan. Rohan was a former ambassador to Vienna, the city in Austria where Marie Antoinette was born. Marie hated Rohan for several reasons. For one thing, he was a notorious womanizer who'd gone bouncing into many a lady's bed when he was in Vienna. In addition, he'd spilled some of Marie's secrets to her mother, the Holy Roman Empress Maria Theresa. Marie had also found out about Rohan's gossiping about Maria Theresa to members of the French court. Knowing of his licentious reputation and his insults, Marie kept Rohan at arm's length. This was frustrating for Rohan because he'd been trying to get back into Marie's good graces and obtain a post in the government. Courtesy of a minor aristocrat by the name of Rétaux de Villette, Jeanne made her way into court and told Rohan that she had become good friends with Marie Antoinette. When Rohan heard of this, he decided to seize the opportunity to get back into Marie's favor and obtain that coveted government post while he was at it. In turn, Jeanne told Rohan that she was trying to encourage Marie to put all hard feelings aside and start anew. Thus began a correspondence between Rohan and the Queen. I say the last two words of the previous sentence with emphasis and big air quotes, because the letters were not from Marie Antoinette, but were merely forgeries created by Rousseau. The letters started off as cordial, but over time they got warmer. The flirtier the letters got, the more Rohan was sure that Marie was in love with him and he was enamored of her. Finally, Rohan begged Jean to set up a meeting with the Queen. This dead-of-night secret meeting took place in the gardens of Versailles. There, Rohan met with a woman whom he assumed to be the Queen. In reality, the woman Rohan spoke to was Nicole Leguay d'Oliva, a prostitute who had been hired by Jean because she bore a passing resemblance to Marie Antoinette. The fake queen then promised to end the bad blood between them. With the gullible cardinal firmly in her grip, Jean took things a step further. She started to borrow money from Rohan, telling him that the large sums were going to be used for charity work on behalf of the Queen. In reality, however, the cash went towards Jean weaseling her way into respectable society. With each step up the slippery ladder, Jean spoke non-stop about her so-called connections with Marie Antoinette. This boasting was done in such a way that people began to believe that Jean was telling the truth. Now, you may be asking, M.E., what about the necklace? When do we see it again? Well, my viewers, it is right about now that the necklace pops back into the picture. By 1785, Baumeur and Bassange were seriously desperate to sell their glittering creation and get their money back. Hearing about Jeanne and her mythical friendship with Marie Antoinette, they approached Jeanne in the hopes that she could get the Queen to purchase the necklace. Knowing how much those dazzling rocks would help her finally achieve a lifestyle worthy of her royal blood, Jeanne accepted the jeweler's commission. Using forged letters, Jeanne began a renewed correspondence between the Queen and Rohan. Jeanne also went to Rohan and told him that Marie Antoinette secretly desired the necklace, but not wanting to risk further damage to her reputation by buying an extravagant item when finances weren't doing so hot, wanted Rohan to serve as an intermediary. Eager to make his queen happy, Rohan agreed. He showed Baumeur and Bassange a forged letter of authorization from the Queen. Happy to at last get the necklace off their hands, the jewelers acquiesced. Rohan bought the 2,000,000 livre bauble and agreed to pay for it in 4 installments over a period of 2 years. That being done, Rohan took the necklace to Jeanne's house and handed it over to Rousseau, who was disguised as one of the Queen's valets. But the necklace never made its way to Marie Antoinette. Instead, it was broken apart and the gems were picked out of their settings one by one. Jeanne's husband then sold the diamonds on the black markets of Paris and London. Thanks to the money that poured in from those sales, Jeanne was living it up in high society and everything was going swimmingly. Or so it seemed. After a certain period of time, Rohan, eager to see the Queen wearing the necklace, was disappointed to see that the bauble he'd spent a serious amount of money on was not on her person. The matter upset Baumeur and Bassange as well, because they had not received the first of the 4 installments agreed upon. Desperate, the jewelers sent Marie Antoinette a note asking her if she was pleased with their creation. Naturally, Marie, having played no part in the matter, didn't know what they were talking about and, annoyed at having to, once again, hear about a piece of jewelry that she clearly didn't want, promptly burned the note. When a reply wasn't made, Beaumeur and Bassange asked Madame Campan, a lady's maid in the service of the Queen, if Marie had read their note. After being told by Madame Campan that Marie had burned the note, the jewelers became upset. Not knowing what was going on, Madame Campan asked them for details. The jewelers produced the forged letters and told her that Rohan was acting as an intermediary on Marie's behalf. Madame Campan then explained the situation to Marie Antoinette. And on August 15th, shortly before he was to conduct the ceremony marking the Feast of the Assumption, Rohan was told to come to Versailles. When Rohan arrived, Louis XVI told him to explain himself and asked where the necklace was. Rohan, confused by the situation, answered that he thought the necklace was in Marie's possession. Louis XVI told Rohan that the necklace hadn't reached the Queen. Now knowing that he'd been duped, Rohan revealed the whole situation to the King and Queen, emphasizing that everything he'd done was to make the Queen happy. But far from smoothing the matter over, the explanation had the opposite effect. Louis XVI was outraged for two reasons. The first, and most obvious, reason was that Marie's reputation, already sullied by pornographic pamphleteers and salacious gossip, had been dragged through the mud. The second reason was that Rohan had failed to recognize that the signatures of the letters, Marie Antoinette de France, were what made them forgeries. Royalty at that time signed with their baptismal names only, a detail that Rohan should not have overlooked, given that he'd been schooled about royal etiquette for years. Not able to come up with a response, Rohan was arrested in the Hall of Mirrors and thrown into the Bastille. 3 days later, Jean, Retaux, and Nicole were also arrested. Nicolas wasn't caught, as he was, by this time, away in London selling diamonds. In early May of 1786, all of those involved in the scandal were put on trial. At the end of the month, the verdicts were read. Having been viewed as underlings in the matter's mechanics, Nicole Leguay d'Oliva was acquitted, and Retaux de Villette was banished from France. Nicolas, still away in London, was tried in absentia, was found guilty, and sentenced to life as a galley slave. As for Rohan, though he was acquitted, he didn't get off scot-free. In addition to being kicked to the curb, like Madame du Barry 12 years earlier, Rohan had to make a formal apology to the court, give up all the offices he currently held, and give a pretty hefty donation to the poor from his own coffers. And what of the scandal's mastermind and ringleader? Jean was declared guilty and was given a sentence that was more fitting for a peasant than for a blue-blooded lady. She was taken to the public square and was whipped by the royal executioner. This was followed by her being branded with a red-hot letter V for voleuse, the French word for a female thief. That being carried out, she was taken to the Salpêtrière, a woman's prison from which she would escape disguised as a boy 2 years later. But by the time all was said and over with, however, the damage had been done. The people now had even more reason to see that the monarchy, and the court as a whole, was too cut off from what was going on outside of the gilded gates of Versailles. And even though Marie had not participated in the affair, she was hated all the more because of it. Had she left Versailles at this point, there was no doubt that she would have been killed. And on October 16th, 1793, that was exactly what happened. So next time you hear the words, "Diamonds are a girl's best friend," remember that they don't always ring true. I'm ME from ME and History and YouTube.